to do that and haven't made a final determination on what that should look like.
Does this, Caitlin, sound at all like he's backing away from some of these things, especially the raising the age limit to 21 for purchases of semi-automatics?
Well, she wouldn't even explicitly say any longer that the president still supports that. And as we know, he has not brought it up in recent days. But we're getting to the point where the White House is going to have to start offering specifics on what kind of legislation they want to see. And we got no specifics from that briefing there just now, not even on what he wants the background check system to look like. He's been calling for it to be improved. They couldn't say explicitly that he still supports raising that age limit to 21. And I should note that he had lunch with several officials from the NRA at the White House on Sunday who have roundly rejected that idea, but also they couldn't say that. So far, his biggest idea has been arming teachers in schools with guns, and they still haven't been able to offer specifics on what that would look like. And the president even admitted today during that meeting with governors that he doesn't think there are that many people who he thinks are qualified to have a gun in a situation like that. So there are still many, many questions left about what the White House is looking for, and I'm sure Republicans on Capitol Hill are wondering what those specifics are going to be before they get behind something.
Speaking of Republicans on Capitol Hill, Congress is back in town today. Will the extraordinary response by Parkland High School students push lawmakers to act, or will any of the measures President Trump is proposing? CNN Congress. Let's take a look at some brand new CNN polling that seems to show there is a surge of support for new gun control laws. 70% of the American people polled in the new CNN poll favor new, stricter gun control laws. 27 oppose. In October, after the massacre in Las Vegas, the number was just 52% support. And the 70% figure includes a majority of people who live in a gun-owning household, as well as majorities across gender, race, and age categories. It's the highest level we've seen since 1993, when, of course, there was the big push in the Clinton years for the Brady Bill and what was called the assault weapons ban.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is it's very clear that the American people are shifting based on the number of tragedies we've seen. I don't know what the tipping point was for this particular shooting, except for these brave kids, right? The fact that they could take time out of their grief to say, enough is enough. We don't want to lose anyone else, even if they're people that we don't know. I think what's unfortunate about this is instead of the NRA leaning into saying, you know what, maybe we need to press reset. Maybe there are some things that we've advocated for as a lobbying group that aren't right. Maybe the fact that we've written big checks to support candidates who normally support our policies isn't enough. Maybe we need to really take another look. And I think the fact that they don't have a real pulse on where the culture is problematic. Just because you lobby for specific interests doesn't mean that you can't ever change course when it's costing lives.
And Bill, take a look at this. Among voters who say gun policy is extremely important when deciding whom to support for Congress, that's gun policy, not necessarily gun control. 62% are Democrats, 40% are Republicans. I mean, this is a complicated issue for a lot of the red state Senate Democrats up for re-election this year, who traditionally vote against gun legislation when it comes up before them in the Senate.
Yeah, they killed the last real attempt under President Obama to pass
2013
gun legislation. It was about a dozen, I think, Senate Democrats voted against legislation supported by President Obama. I mean, the conventional wisdom would be you show that number now, and right after Parkland, more Democrats say they care a lot about it. But at the end of the day, NRA members and supporters and gun rights advocates will be the ones who vote on that issue, and the huge majority of voters will vote on the economy and many other issues. I'm not so sure that hasn't changed. I sort of agree with Angela. Maybe it's different now, but I guess we'll see. We'll see. But the administration does. If they want something to happen, they have to take the lead. I think the congressional process by itself is unlikely to produce legislation. It is complicated, gun policy legislation. I would have thought the age limit of 21 is the one thing you could have come to agreement on. I mean, it's already, as I understand it, a 21-year-old federal law for purchase of handguns.
Yeah.
To say that you should be 21 to purchase a semi-automatic rifle wouldn't seem like such a big step.
And Caitlin, President Trump keeps on saying, even though he didn't mention raising the age limit today, he keeps on talking about disagreeing with the NRA when he thinks they're wrong. He did say that today. I think there's part of him that wants to be a deal maker and would even possibly like to have taken on the NRA on one issue, but there's also part of him that's so loyal and appreciates loyalty that maybe he's really torn here.
Yeah, he certainly does feel the urge to do something here. That is very clear that he is eager to do something. And it's interesting to see if he's going to put the NRA into a corner, because he keeps saying that they're good people, they're on our side, they want to do something. So what is going to happen when it comes to a head and he proposes something like raising that age limit? Seriously, he proposes it. And that's something they disagree with, because as the White House said last week, they don't expect to agree with the NRA on everything, which is an interesting thing for a Republican president to say. And then today, the president echoed that same sentiment. sentiment. He doesn't know if they're going to agree on everything, and if they don't, he'll argue with them over it.
I want to show you guys this. I'm not sure if you saw it. The president's re-election campaign sent out an email using a photograph of President Trump with a 17-year-old survivor of the shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. It's Madeline Wilford. In an email, it does ask for donations to the Trump campaign. Bill, any thoughts?
One would wish that politicians, including the president, didn't use that kind of, those photos or those kinds of appeals and emails, for campaign donations. But I suppose they work. But just on your point, Caitlin, I think it's, if you think about it, there are two big issues now where the president has shown some instinct to want to compromise and then has maybe or retreated before pressure from what he calls his base, immigration and guns. And both are pending. DACA, which remains an issue that could be dealt with over the next couple of months, and now on guns. And it will be interesting to see which way the president goes as a political matter and as a substantive matter on both those issues.
Angela, I want to give you a chance to respond to that fundraising appeal.
It is absolutely disgusting, and there is no place where that's appropriate. I'm just grateful to the team who was, I think, a close friend of that survivor saying, I don't appreciate you using my friend's photo in this way on Twitter. It's just like, again, thank God for the courage of these young people who are standing up and challenging us to be our better selves in this moment.
Everyone stick around. We have a lot more to talk about. As for the investigation in Florida and that school resource officer, the deputy who never went into the school, we're hearing his side of the story for the very first time, and that's next. Sticking with our politics today, politics lead today, Ivanka Trump. She's a senior advisor to the president, her father. She has traveled around the world on official business representing the United States of America, most recently in South Korea this weekend, celebrating the Olympics and American athletes, and even meeting with South Korean President Moon. Ivanka Trump calls herself a women's rights advocate. She promotes equal pay for workers. She's voiced support for various women, accusing various men of foul deeds. So keeping all that in mind, I want you to listen to her response when asked by a White House correspondent about the myriad women alleging sexual harassment and assault against them by her father.
Do you believe your father's accusers?
I think it's a pretty inappropriate question to ask a daughter if she believes the accusers of her father when he's affirmatively stated that there's no truth to it.
Let's bring back my panel. Well, can I ask her that question, or could Peter Alexander ask her that question as a senior advisor to the president, if not as a daughter?
Right. I see how it's uncomfortable as a daughter to be asked about the allegations made against your father that range from sexual misconduct to sexual assault. But I can't fathom how someone who does not take a paycheck but flies around the country and the world on a taxpayer-funded airplane. She represents the United States at the Olympics in South Korea. She's supposed to be a champion of women's rights in this West Wing, and she enjoys all of this, but she thinks she should be spared from tough questions from a reporter that would ask any other White House official those questions, because Sarah Sanders has certainly faced them at the briefing. So I don't fathom how someone who holds the title of senior advisor and special assistant to the president, a role that many other people would love to fill, can say that she should not be asked about those allegations made against her father.
We're going to have it both ways. We should point out, Angela, she did ultimately answer the question. Take a listen.
I believe my father. I know my father. So I think I have that right as a daughter to believe my father.
So she believes that all the women are lying.
So I think what's interesting about this is also like the response on social media, which is no other daughter would face these types of questions. You've already raised both of you have already raised the point that she serves in a role that is taxpayer funded. I think the other thing that's very interesting is we can't continue to normalize this situation or this president. No other president has been recorded saying things like, I just kiss him. I can't help it. I'm not going to go there.
We remember.
Grab him. Yes.
Yeah,
you're like, please don't rehash it.
We get it.
But the reality of it is you can't treat this as a normal presidency for the reasons that Bill said at the top of the show. This is different, and so it requires a different response. You're on record saying these things, so perhaps you forgot that your dad says he has this compulsive reaction on the recording to do these things to women. So I'm not sure what she believes or why, but there's definitely evidence that supports something very different.
In 2008, Bill, Chelsea Clinton was asked by somebody at an Indiana town hall a similar question. Take a listen.
Wow, you're the first person actually that's ever asked me that question. In the, I don't know, maybe 70 college campuses that I've now been to. And I do not think that's any of your business.
The specific question was whether or not her mother undermined her own feminist credentials during the Lewinsky scandal. I should point out, I don't think that's inappropriate either, that question.
Yeah, no, nor do I. But I think what's also amazing, we're talking about what's normal and not normal. It's not normal to have your daughter and your son-in-law as senior White House staff members. It is normal to use family members for ceremonial occasions, send them abroad sometimes, and then they have a sort of quasi-government status for, the 3 days that they're representing you at the Olympics or something. But it's a big problem. There's a reason we have anti-nepotism laws. I'm still a little unclear why somehow those didn't apply. Maybe they don't apply to White House staff, and they were passed after Bobby Kennedy was his brother's attorney general, and everyone realized, well, that is not really a tolerable situation.
Well,
but it's a big problem. The Trump businesses chug along. Ivanka's two brothers run it. She has a stake in them, I believe. Jared Kushner has huge business interests and debts, and he's dealing with people who, as a government official, that he also has had, and may still be having.
Yeah, there's a lot of
dealings
conflicts.
with. I just think the degree to which that's sort of all been sloughed over, partly honestly, because a lot of people in the media think, maybe correctly, that the two of them are kind of an influence for sanity in the White House compared to some of the people who've been there, Mike Flynn, Seb Gorka, and others. And they kind of have got a little bit actually of a
little bit of a pass.
Yeah.
Kaylin, I want to ask you about Ivanka's husband, Jared Kushner. What is his status right now? Well, we were told that John Kelly was the chief of staff, was eliminating all interim security clearances, that if you haven't gotten the security clearance by last Friday, I think it was, that was it. It's Monday today. Has anybody even seen Jared Kushner at the White House today?
Not so far that I've spoken to, but he's kind of left twisting in the wind here. He wasn't actually at the governor's meeting earlier today. There was a chair for him, but it was left empty. But you're right, he's kind of at an impasse right now because this went into effect on Friday that if you were operating on an interim security clearance as of June 1 or earlier, which he is, that you would no longer have access to that highly classified information, which he did. He was actually one of the top White House officials who requested the most access to classified information over the last 13 months or so that they've been in office. And a lot of people who have been in the intelligence agencies before say they don't see how it's possible for him to move forward with this foreign policy portfolio that he has without a security clearance.
I mean, seriously, when you think about it, Angela, dealing with Mexico and who knows what law enforcement situation is going on behind the scenes in Mexico, dealing with the Israel and the Palestinians, how can you do that job without a high-level security clearance?
You shouldn't. And Bill, you were just mentioning this about just the anti-nepotism laws. Congress has ethics rules in place for nepotism. Congress has rules in place for people handling classified information. When I needed to see classified briefing documents, I had to go into a SCIF at the Committee on Homeland Security.
That's a secure facility.
I love Jake as
I have to translate Washington. Washingtonese for our viewers. Yeah.
And I had to have a security clearance. And you have to file an application. So I don't understand why they get to go around these things. But I'm glad that the interim thing, I didn't even have one of those while I waited for my clearance.
There does seem to be a showdown going on here between Kelly and Kushner.
Yeah, and I do think you hinted at this earlier. The fact that Rosenstein called over, I guess, placed the call for Kelly, and then ended up talking to the White House counsel, saying, we have a problem here with we're not going to be able to complete Kushner's.
Because the FBI is in charge of doing the investigation for security
normally
clearance.
The FBI would call over and say, hey, we just need another month to look at some of the financial transactions. The fact that Rosenstein calls does suggest to me, and this is speculation, that it's because of the Mueller investigation and material that's been turned up there that they don't feel they can clear Kushner. So I think that's an interesting. That means he's not going to get a clearance until that investigation concludes.
So what does he do then?
That's a great question. What does he do?
Would he leave? I mean, it has been reported that Kelly has told associates he wouldn't mind if Ivanka and Jared went back to New York.
Oh, he certainly wouldn't. The tension is very high between those three because even though they originally pushed for Kelly to become the chief of staff and take over for Reince, they thought that this restraint that he was going to impose on the West Wing wouldn't necessarily apply to them in the manner that it has. And they certainly have soured on John Kelly. So I'm sure he would not blink twice if Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner left the White House.
Ask not for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for Kushner. Angela, Caitlin, Bill, thanks one and all for being here. Several companies are dropping their affiliation and deals with the NRA, and now one state's lieutenant governor is threatening one of those companies for activism. Stick around.